Most gardeners rip this plant out of their beds like it's a weed, then turn around and spend money on supplements trying to fix the exact deficiencies that plant would have solved. That mistake costs you minerals, soil biology support, and one of the most resilient nutrient-dense greens you can grow without effort. If you care about real yields and real nutrition, ignoring this plant is laziness disguised as tidiness. I'm talking about stinging nettle, the same plant that ancient cultures referred to as a sacred or god plant because of its strength-building properties. And before you roll your eyes, I've grown it intentionally in raised beds, in neglected corners of backyard plots, and even processed it into controlled inputs for hydro systems. This isn't folklore gardening, this is performance-based growing. If you're serious about improving your soil and food quality, subscribe to the channel now. Farm Logic is about tested systems, not recycled gardening myths. Most people misunderstand nettle because it stings. That sting is silica and formic compounds doing their job. But that same plant is loaded with nitrogen, iron, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and trace minerals in a highly bioavailable form. When I first stopped pulling nettle and started managing it, my compost quality improved noticeably within one season. Let's talk about why this plant actually matters in a production garden. Nettle is a dynamic accumulator, but not in the exaggerated internet sense. It doesn't magically mine nutrients from 10 feet down. What it does do extremely well is capture available nitrogen and soluble minerals aggressively and convert them into leafy biomass fast. In practical terms, that means you can turn free wild growth into concentrated fertilizer. In one of my 4x8 raised beds, I allow nettle to grow along the north edge early in the season. By the time it reaches about 30 to 40 centimeters tall, before flowering, I cut it at the base. At that stage, nutrient density is highest and stems are still manageable. I harvest roughly 2 kilograms of fresh nettle from a small patch. Half of that goes straight into compost layers. If I'm building a hot pile, I alternate 5 centimeters of chopped nettle with 10 centimeters of carbon material like dry leaves or shredded cardboard. Nettle accelerates microbial activity because of its nitrogen content. In a properly hydrated pile at around 55 to 60% moisture, I consistently hit internal temperatures above 55 degrees Celsius within 3 days. And this is where precision matters. Compost that doesn't heat properly doesn't break down efficiently. I monitor internal pile temperatures using a probe thermometer. I personally use the ThermoPro TP 620. It's marketed for kitchen use, but temperature is temperature. I've used it to check compost cores and even liquid ferments. It gives a fast digital readout, it's waterproof, and it's durable enough to handle garden work. If you want to check it out, the link is in the description. It's not mandatory, but if you're serious about controlled composting, measuring beats guessing every time. Now let's move beyond compost and talk about nettle tea, which is where most gardeners either get great results or completely mess it up. The internet tells you to throw nettle in a bucket of water and wait. That's incomplete advice. Ratios and timing matter. I use roughly 1 kilogram of chopped fresh nettle to 10 liters of non-chlorinated water in a covered container. I stir it daily and let it ferment for 10 to 14 days, depending on ambient temperature. At 25 degrees Celsius, it's usually ready in about 10 days. When bubbling slows and the liquid turns dark brown, it's done. The smell will be strong. That's normal. What you've created is a nitrogen-rich liquid feed, but you never apply it undiluted. That's how you burn roots and shock soil microbes. For heavy feeders like tomatoes and squash in raised beds, I dilute it 1 part nettle extract to 10 parts water. For leafy greens, I go weaker, closer to 1 to 15. In a 4x8 bed, I apply about 3 liters of diluted solution evenly across the surface at early vegetative stage, then water it in lightly. Within a week, you'll notice deeper leaf color and stronger vertical growth if nitrogen was limiting. If plants were already dark green, you won't see dramatic change, and that's fine. Fertilizer corrects deficiency. It doesn't create miracles. Now, here's where serious gardeners pay attention. Excess nitrogen late in the season reduces fruit set and increases pest pressure. I stop nettle applications once flowering begins for most crops. At that stage, I shift to potassium-forward inputs like fermented wood ash extract, which we've covered in another video. Let's talk about eating it, because that's the other half of the story. Young nettle tops harvested before flowering are one of the most nutrient-dense greens you can grow. I blanch them for 60 seconds to neutralize the sting, then use them like spinach. If you're growing food for mineral density, not just calories, this matters. Many gardeners focus on yield weight and ignore nutrient concentration. Nettle is dense in iron and magnesium, especially when grown in mineral-rich soil. In hydroponic systems, I don't grow nettle directly in the channels. It's too aggressive. But I have experimented with filtered nettle extract in small, isolated systems. The key is filtration and monitoring EC and pH closely. Even a small amount can spike nutrient levels unpredictably. For hydro growers, I recommend using nettle primarily as a compost activator, rather than a reservoir additive, unless you're comfortable adjusting solution chemistry precisely. Now let's correct a common myth. Some people claim nettle improves soil just by existing. That's only partially true. If you let it grow and remove the biomass, you're actually exporting nutrients. But if you chop and drop it in place, you're cycling nutrients locally. And if you harvest it and compost it, then return that compost, you're building soil structure and microbial life for the long term. In one backyard plot I manage, I designated a 1-meter strip purely for nettle production. Over 2 seasons, by cutting and composting that biomass and returning finished compost to vegetable beds, organic matter increased visibly. Soil texture improved from compacted clay loam to a looser, darker structure that retained moisture better. There's a trade-off though, and nettle spreads. If you let it flower and set seed, you'll be managing it everywhere. I cut before flowering consistently. Control is part of respect. Another overlooked benefit is pest resilience. Plants grown with moderate balanced nitrogen from organic ferments tend to have thicker cell walls compared to overfed synthetic systems. That doesn't make them pest-proof, but I've observed reduced aphid pressure in beds where nutrient balance is steady rather than spiking. And here's something experienced growers will appreciate. Nettle ferments also contain growth-stimulating compounds that seem to support early vegetative vigor. It's not magic. It's likely a combination of micronutrients and plant hormones released during fermentation. But the effect is consistent enough in my trials that I integrate it every season. The reason ancient cultures valued nettle wasn't superstition, it was observation. A plant that grows aggressively without irrigation, captures nutrients efficiently, feeds livestock, feeds people, and strengthens soil systems definitely earns its reputation. But only if you manage it intentionally. If you're still pulling nettle out and tossing it in the trash, you're wasting biomass that could be driving compost heat, correcting nitrogen deficiencies, and improving mineral density in your food. This channel exists for gardeners who want performance, not aesthetics. Growing better food isn't about trendy crops. It's about understanding systems and using what's already growing around you. If this changed how you see that weed in the corner of your yard, subscribe to the channel and share this video with another serious grower. Practical knowledge compounds just like good compost. And the better we understand our inputs, the better food we grow.